So today we're continuing in our journey on the Fountain of Grace series. I hope you've been enjoying it so far. I have to go ahead and express some appreciation to two places. One, to the Greater New Jersey Conference. It was kind of their conception idea that we are using that is openly available to anyone who would like to. But also I have to give thanks to Ashley McCoy Bruce. You may recognize that last name. It's kind of unique. Because she's the one that said, hey, James, have you ever thought about using one of their ideas? And I think that it's been really helpful. I've enjoyed all the cups that we've been working on from, I guess I've enjoyed them all up until this Sunday. Started with the cup of fasting, where you had the big cup and the little cup, the things that we take on, the things that we give up. We had the cup of living water, where we celebrated that Christ gives us this spring of living water that wells up within us. And then I actually got to break a cup here in the pulpit, which was a lot of fun. But talking about how that in those broken places, Christ uses those with this extraordinary gift of God that's present within us through the gift of Jesus Christ, that really helps to turn those hard places into things of beauty. And then last week, Reverend Matt Kennett continued from the previous sermons and actually brought several cups. It was the cup you choose. And if you were here, you know he brought one that was about friends and one that was about family, and the other was about memory. And those were all great. I mean, ultimately, he was saying to choose the cup that is Christ, to choose Christ. But this week is no fun. I can't bring in a NASCAR cup or a Disney cup or something from the original Pancake House. I've tried to be creative and fun and witty, and I just can't make this one palatable. There's not anything that I can do that makes it clever. This week is the cup that we would not ordinarily choose on our own. Let me explain it this way. In the Gospel of Matthew, we have a rather unusual scene. It makes me think of high school and parent-teacher conferences, where you have two boys coming to meet the teacher with their parent. Now, we know that James and John, their dad's name is Zebedee. What's their mom's name? The mother. I see, that's the mother of James and John. I really think that since she's the one in the story, I would love to know her name. So I'm going to call her Mama. Because Mama goes to a conference with Jesus because she knows, as a mother, she's very concerned about her boys and their future. They have given up everything and are following Jesus. And it's time that she has a word with Jesus. Because she knows about him and knows of his kingdom, because of what she says. She knows that he's the Messiah, that he's coming to establish God's reign on earth. She also knows exactly how much her boys have given up and have given to, and how they have blood, sweat, and tears poured into Jesus, and she wants their commitment to be acknowledged. He wants Jesus just to promise her and to promise them that they would have a place in authority and leadership. And by the way, the boys actually were fine with her doing that. They knew, because Jesus then speaks to them. They knew that this was coming. But she said, I don't really want much. I just want one of them to be Jesus' right-hand man and the other one to be his left-hand man. So right and left men. I don't know. Anyway, this is what we want for my boys. Now, I can understand that. As a dad, I know what it feels like to want my children's accomplishments, their work, to be appreciated. To have someone to say, well done, when they've used their talents, when they've poured themselves into something. That means a lot to me, to see that recognition. But she's wanting something a little more than a certificate or a trophy or even some fancy cup with titles engraved on it, isn't she? I can just see Jesus as she is asking, get this grin that he must have had on his face a lot. And it's that grin of, I love you and you don't know what you're saying. You really just don't understand this, he says. You can't. And he turns to the boys and he says, do you really think that you're able to drink of the cup that I'm about to drink? I mean, this isn't some souvenir cup that you can go to remember the time that you went to have an omelet and pancakes and a side of grits. This is a different cup. And they said, oh, yes, we can do this. Yeah, we can drink from your cup. And Jesus knows that they will have no clue as to what that means until they see him crucified. But it's not just James and John that are confused. Do you notice that the other 10 get stirred up too? They get angry because of what was being asked, which means that they must have thought that it was something that Jesus would have been expected to do. If they would have thought that the cup of Christ that he was offering was one of prestige and authority, or one of suffering instead of prestige and authority, then they would have said, let them drink that fully. They'll see that they really don't want it. But instead, they got angry. Why are you getting in this place of power and position with Jesus? And so Jesus has to call them all together. You know, sometimes when your children fight, you just have to bring them and you sit them down and say, okay, listen, I need you to understand something. Here in the world, people value power and authority. And they want you to know that they're powerful. They want to lord it over you. They want to be tyrants. They're seeking accolades for the titles that they bear. They want to be celebrated, even venerated, lifted up on a high pedestal for everybody to see. But this, says Jesus, is not who I call you to be. You want to follow me? You really want to be great in my group? Then you have to be a servant. Because even I came to serve, not to be served. I came to give up my life. I came to take up the cross. To follow me is to take up my cup of suffering and sacrifice. See what I mean by this is not palatable. This is not the nice cup to bear, because as disciples, they are learners, they're students. They're following this teacher, Jesus, and they're striving to not only learn his teaching, but to be like him, to emulate him. And this is not a path that leads to prominence. It's a path that leads to the cross. Because you see, at the heart of the cross, the heart of the cup of Christ is the cross. It's living a life for the sake of others, being willing to lay down your life, even as Jesus did himself. It costs blood, sweat, and tears, sometimes without acknowledgement, without accolades, but it's because it's what we're called to do. Not too many appointments back, I was the new pastor at Grace United Methodist Church in Pickens, South Carolina. It's the big church in town, but when you say the big church in town, Pickens is population in the single-digit thousands, where we're in the hundred-digit thousands, okay? I mean, there is a little bit of a scale thing that's going on there. And as I went to the congregation, I kept hearing people talk about, oh, I've got to do this for the gleaning house. Yeah, we've got to do that for the gleaning house. You know, this week we've got to go back to Ingalls and pick up boxes for the gleaning house. And I just kept hearing people talk about this gleaning house thing. Now, there was not a sign. There was not an advertisement. I didn't see a thanks for doing that. It's just kind of, it was always there and working in the background. And it was just like Tuesday mornings, there were a group of people that would disappear and go to this gleaning house, whatever that was. Well, I learned that the gleaning house is a food pantry. Well, I've had a food pantry before. I mean, you have a little room somewhere where you got some food and people stop by and you put stuff in a bag and you say, I hope this helps you, and maybe have it open a day or a couple days a week. I mean, come on. I mean, it's nice. I mean, it's important, but I don't understand why people are always milling about the gleaning house. So early on, I went and I pulled up to this metal building across the street from the Department of Social Services. And it was really one of those prefab metal buildings with a huge door on either side for trucks to back up to and a small office door in the middle. And I was like, okay, this is the gleaning house. Walk in, and it is a building larger than this sanctuary. Packed. There are walk-in refrigerators with pallets of food that have been donated or purchased at an extreme discount from local donors or local grocery stores. There's shelves going up 15, 16 feet high with all of these non-perishable items that have been separated and divided into categories. And these boxes, the boxes that they were talking about were those, you could fit 4 gallons of milk inside of one. And there had to have been hundreds of those boxes. And I didn't realize it's because they gave away hundreds of them every week. And they had this massive line after line after line of tables with boxes and boxes that said, okay, this is for the families with 2 to 3, and this is for the families with 4 to 5, and this is for 6 and more. And I was like, what? And they said, yeah, and it takes over 24 people to run this thing. Because over 400 families would come because of the need there within the community. You're talking anywhere from 800 to 1,200, 1,500 people a week. And Grace United Methodist Church was 90% of the volunteers, of the getting it ready, of the serving, of the working to do it. And it was amazing to see the compassion that was on their faces, that the work that was going in preparation before and cleaning up after, and all week long. And not a single one of them had to be in leadership. They didn't have to get acknowledgement. They didn't need a sign on the door saying, this is Grace's ministry. What it was they were answering the call of God in Jesus Christ. They were serving the community, and they were doing what Jesus had called them to do, because it wasn't about the kudos or the position. It was about the cup of discipleship. I mean, that's the challenge of this week. It's not the easiest cup that we bring to the fountain of grace, and yet it's essential. Because we really can't be disciples without the cup of discipleship. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a German pastor and a theologian who was there in Germany during the time of the height of the Nazis, he wrote about the cost of discipleship, and he believed that true discipleship requires sacrifice and obedience to God. And he said in his book, The Cost of Discipleship, he said, when Christ calls us, he bids us to come and to die. When Jesus calls, he's saying, take up a cross. We have these beautiful images of crosses in our sanctuaries. We might even have them on gold around our necks or attached to our ears, but the cross was a symbol, as the hymn says, of suffering, of shame, of ridicule. People didn't want to be associated with a cross back then, and yet Jesus invites his disciples to take one up. This is the cup that Jesus is offering to James and to John. This is not fun and glamorous, but there it is. And to drink from this cup is to take deep draughts of suffering and sacrifice for others, as Jesus drank in deeply for us on the cross. This cup of discipleship does, however, help us to ward off the dangers of what Bonhoeffer calls cheap grace. Yes, we only are saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. There is no other way. There's no other requirement. At the same time, we acknowledge that our faith without works is dead. That faith is shallow and superficial, that does not transform the life of the individual. It should lead us toward repentance, towards turning away from our path and our way and the things that we would choose, and instead following Jesus, especially when it's difficult. We're called to be servants, to live for the sake of others, and to take up this cross, to drink from this cup daily. This is the essence of this cup, the cup that we must drink if we're to follow from Christ. See what I meant by saying at the beginning of my sermon that this is really not a palatable cup? It's not a fun cup. It's not the cup that the disciples were imagining. It's not the cup that the world offers to give us. Because all around us in the world, it's a race to the top. It's a desire for recognition, for prominence, for position, and for power. And then here comes Jesus. And he offers us the cup of discipleship, the cross. As the disciples of Jesus Christ, we must remember that our work, our call is not about us. It's about this love of God that compels us to serve others following the example of Jesus. even when it comes at great cost, even at the cost of our own lives. Jesus calls us to take up this cup of discipleship daily so that it makes a difference in our lives and in the world around us. And when we do, our work becomes a reflection of God's love, and we can draw near to the fountain of grace. Amen.
Speak, O Lord, as we come to you to receive the food of your holy word. Take your truth, plant it deep in us, shape and fashion us in your likeness, that the light of Christ may be seen today in our acts of love and our deeds of faith. Speak, O Lord, and fulfill in us all your purposes for your glory. Teach us, Lord, full obedience, holy reverence, true humility. Test our thoughts and our attitudes in the radiance of your purity. Cause our faith to rise, cause our eyes to see your majestic love and authority. Words of power that can never fail, let their truth prevail over unbelief. Speak, O Lord, and renew our minds. Help us grasp the heights of your plans for us. Truths unchanged from the dawn of time that will echo down through eternity. And by grace we'll stand on your promises, and by faith we'll walk as you walk with us. Speak, O Lord, till your church is built and the earth is filled with your